still my strength and shield. When I tread a verge of trouble, with my anxious fears subside, without death and hell's delusion, and me safe on careless songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. I will ever give to thee. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Now we're going to have Sunday school and children's and sermon time now. So make yourselves comfortable, everybody, and just sit back and relax. And we're going to be taking a look at the book of Genesis again. So we're taking a look at Genesis in chapter 23. Chapter 20. Chapter 22 at the very end, and then chapter 23. See you in a bit. If you all found the passage, I'll ask you questions about it in a moment. So we read in verse 20, it says, "And it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, behold," I've got to go back to the beginning of that chapter. Let me just see now. For some reason, my computer switched to the wrong chapter. So the end of 22 says, "And it came to pass," verse 20, "and it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, Huz, his firstborn, and Buz, his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jilpah, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Rehumah. She bare also Tebah, and Gaham, and Thahash, and Makaz." Okay, so this is a little bit of an insight, because as we're going through the book of Genesis, we find that it's actually completely historical from the beginning right away to the end. It would be fairly pointless to have a record written like this with people's names listed, Abraham's brothers, Abraham's brother and his brother's family. Okay, it'd be very pointless to record all their names and tell us all about them for no purpose. They don't relate to the story very much at all, except to say that Abraham's brother also had a young girl that was a slave girl, and he married her. He married her properly, as a marriage would be. All right there. Did somebody speak, or is it just okay? All right. His brother had a concubine. She was a slave girl, probably conquered as a result of war or something like that. But he had married her honorably, and so she had a little girl. Her name was Rebecca, and we'll find more about Rebecca in the story in Genesis. It's the story of a love match made in heaven. Is the story of Rebecca, but we'll talk about that on a future occasion, God willing. So Abraham discovers his brother Nahor has had other family, and the list is given. So this is a list of real people, real names, and real circumstances. The book of Genesis is not a fairy story, it's a historical record. And there's a tremendous amount of insight that we can find from archaeology today to verify the stories and the events that we find in the book of Genesis. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of artifacts that are being discovered in Israel today by the archaeologists to confirm a great deal about the book of Genesis. Now in chapter 23, verse 1, it says this. It says, And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. You know, when Sarah died, Abraham was not present. It's one of those things of life that can happen. Sometimes even the closest of families find that when the husband or the wife dies, or anybody in the family dies, that other people are not present and they have to come home. They have to stop what they're doing and come home for the funeral. And that's what happened in the life of Abraham too. She was 127. That's a good age, isn't it? And I'll just tell you something. She didn't look old. She looked very beautiful, even at that age. We're told in other places how very beautiful she was. But she was 127. That's a good age. I don't know whether there's anybody in the world of that age today. They talk about the oldest person being 117. But 127, that's another 10 years again, isn't it? People have in the past lived for very great ages. There's the Hunza people in northern Tibet, and they live for, on average in the family, they live for 130 or 140 years of age. And when expeditions went to see them, and they went to interview the people, they interviewed the man there that was the oldest person that had ever been recorded in modern times. He lived for 252 years. When he got to 100 years, he had an award from the Tibetan government, a certificate for being the oldest person in the country. When he got to 250, he had another certificate given to him. And they had all the list of all his wives and all his children. He'd married over 30 times. But one after another, they all died. But even in his very, very, very later years, he still was having children from his wives, which is incredible, really. It just goes to show that very old age is very much a possibility. He did die at the age of 252, and the BBC went all the way to visit the tribe. And when they went to visit them, they gathered all the family together, and they asked about who's the oldest in the family now, and someone said, "I'm the oldest now." Okay. And they said, "Well, how old are you?" And I think they said they were about 30 years younger, so 250, 230 something. And he said, "Oh, that's amazingly old." But somebody else said, "Yeah, but I'm his son." And they went around all the room and they found that there were great grandchildren. This man who lived to 252, he could remember the Spanish Inquisition. That's a long time ago. He remembers America being discovered. Amazing. So Sarah was also very old, 127. Don't forget, Abraham was older than Sarah by 10 years, and he was still alive. But she died, and Abraham went to mourn and to wait for. The obvious conclusion we can come to is this, is that when Abraham went to mourn for her, it was a long and hard journey because she died in his absence. He had to go back to her, to the funeral. Okay. But he also had to go back to make preparations for her burial. And when we read in verse 3, it says, and Abraham stood up before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. You see, this is a very sacred passage in Genesis. There's a couple of other passages similar. It's also similar in the life of Jacob, where he had to bury his wife. And for all those of you that are married and your wife is still alive, listen, that can happen. It's possible, for a woman to die and leave her husband behind. It's also possible the other way around. And the most important thing we need to learn from a passage like this is that death is certain for all of us. It's not something to not talk about. It's something to face up to, and then to face up to the responsibilities. Okay. In Abraham's particular case, it was a little bit more tricky for him because Abraham lived all his life and never had a plot of land. The Lord had promised to Abraham, all of this country, as far as you can see, it's all going to be yours one day in the kingdom. When I raise you from the dead again, then it'll all be yours and it'll all belong to you and to your descendants. This is the great problem we have thinking about Israel today. All of the land that they could see, all the way from the river of Egypt, all the way to the river Euphrates, all the way from Mosul in the front, all the way down to the bottom of Saudi Arabia, is all belonging to the children of Israel, but not yet. It'll belong to them in a future day. And while Abraham was alive, there wasn't a single plot of land that belonged to him. And so we learn a very valuable lesson here, which is that all of the promises that God gave to Abraham were not going to be fulfilled during his mortal life. While he was alive as a human being, he didn't enter into any of the blessings that God had for him. So does that mean that he's going to lose out on all of these promises? No. What it means is that God is going to raise him from the dead in a future day, and he'll walk that land again, and then he will have a plot that'll be his own. He probably would like to go and have a plot near to where his wife is buried, probably. But we read also of Daniel in the last book of Daniel. Daniel says this. He says, I know that in my latter days I will stand again upon the earth in the plot that God will give me. So Daniel will live again. He'll have another human life, and he'll stand in his garden. He'll stand next to his olive. He'll stand next to his vine, and he'll live again. And guess who will be with him? Sarah will be there, and Isaac will be there, and Rebecca will be there. It's just an incredible concept that this life is not all the life that you will ever have. There is a life to come in the world to come. And God is going to raise everybody from the dead. He's even going to raise from the dead every wicked person that's ever lived. But he's not raising them from the dead so they can just have another human life. In their case, he's raising them from the dead so that he can judge them while they stand before him in full health and mind. They'll stand before him and they'll be judged. And we find that in the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, it says, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God. This is the great judgment of the great white throne judgment. And this is why when we come to a passage like this, it's so absolutely essential that in this life, we make sure that we make our peace with God. That's why it's so absolutely essential. People often unknowingly pass off into death, not realizing that their sins are unforgiven, not realizing that though Christ came and died on the cross for them, they have never personally made that their own. They've never personally received the gift of God's forgiveness. That's the message of today, is that this life is very brief. We used to sing the hymn, life at best is very brief, like the falling of a leaf, like the binding of a sheaf. Be in time. Be in time. Don't let the years pass by and find that you're on your deathbed and you still have not made peace with God. Do it. Make your peace. There may be apologies to be made. There may be reparations to be made. Who knows what may need to be done in your life. But the important thing is there needs to be sins that are forgiven before you get to that day. So Abraham didn't have any land of his own. While he lived, he had nothing. You see, Abraham was just a shepherd. He was not a builder. He never had a house. And even when Isaac is born, and then when Isaac's son is born, Jacob, The three of them, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, what were they doing? He says they were living in tents. You see, Abraham was a pilgrimage here. He never had a home of his own. He lived in a tent all his life, a very long life. When we get to the book of Hebrews, we find that for every day of his life, it says he looked for a city whose builder and maker was God. Abraham was not a city builder like David and Solomon and other kings. Abraham was a person that was a stranger in this land. He didn't have a city of his own. He didn't have a home of his own in this land. He just was a man that lived in a tent all his life. Now, verse 5, and the children of Heth answered Abraham, saying unto him, Hear us, O Lord, thou art a mighty prince among us. In the choice of our sepulchres, bury thy dead. None of us shall withhold from thee his sepulchre, that thou mayest bury thy dead. So how did the people of the land view Abraham? Well, Abraham was a man, 147 years of age at this time. But I suggest to you, he looked very well and very strong. He was actually a warrior. He was a warrior chieftain, is how we would describe him. The leader of a tribe, the small family that he had. And the children of Heth had a great deal of respect for Abraham. They didn't argue with him. They said, Listen to us, Abraham. You are a mighty prince among us. You can pick any one of the sepulchres a sepulchre is just a burying place. You could call it a mausoleum today, but it's a sepulchre. You can pick any one of those for burying your dead, and nobody's going to withhold a sepulchre from you, because we want you to be able to do this well, to do this properly. And verse 7 says, And Abraham stood and bowed himself to the people of the land, even to the children of Heth. And he communed with them, saying, If it be your mind that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me and entreat me for Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he hath, which is in the end of his field. For as much money as it is worth, he shall give it to me for a possession, for a burial place among you. So Abraham, you see, was a very wealthy man. He wasn't just big and strong and very influential, but he had a lot of financial resources. And he said, Will you do me one favor? Go and ask Ephron to let me buy the cave of Machpelah. Verse 10, And Ephron dwelt among the children of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the audience of the children of Heth, even of all that went in at the gate of the city, saying, Nay, my lord, hear me. The field give I thee, and the cave that is therein, I give it to thee. In the presence of the sons of my people give I it to thee, to bury thy dead. And Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land, and he spake unto Ephron in the audience of the people of the land, saying, But if thou wilt give it, I pray thee, hear me, I will give thee money for the field. Take the money from me, I will bury my dead there. This is an honorable man. He didn't want to have a free burial place. He had bought his burial place, and he wanted to buy his burial place for his wife. She wasn't going to be buried for free on somebody else's land and with somebody else's money. That wasn't what he wanted to do at all. Verse 14, And Ephron answered Abraham, saying unto him, My lord, hearken unto me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that betwixt me and thee? Bury therefore thy dead. And Abraham hearkened unto Ephron, and Abraham weighed to Ephron the silver, which he had named in the audience of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, current money with the merchant. And the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field and the cave, which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in all the borders round about, were made sure. So they would have been items to indicate that this land was belonging to somebody. That's what had to be done. If you go to France today, I was in France many years ago, and I was in the field that belonged to the house we were staying at. And they said, come and have a look at this. And I went to the edge of it, and there was this thing. It looked a bit like that, but it was on an iron stick, an iron peg, and it was sticking in the ground. And I said, what's that for? And they said, that must never, ever be touched and never, ever be moved. And I said, why is that? They said, that's a boundary mark put there by the government. It costs money to put that there, to tell you where the border of the garden is. And that's what Abraham did here, not with the government, but a boundary was, there were things put up that specified where the boundary of the land was that Abraham bought. And unto Abraham for the possession for the children of Heth, before all that went in at the gate of the city. So he did it honorably before the judges who sit in the city gate. You see, in those days, if you had an issue and you wanted to get it solved between you and your friend and there was a dispute, you would go to the men who sat in the gate and they would give judgment. And that's what went on here. These signs that were put in the field were verified, as it were, and rubber stamped, we would say, by the judges in the city. Verse 19. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan. Can I say that if you go to Israel today and you go to Hebron, you'll be able to go and find the cave, and you'll find the things, the signs that were put out around the field to indicate that this belongs to Abraham. Okay, so verse 20. The field and the cave that is therein was made sure unto Abraham for a possession, for a burying place by the sons of Heth. So this has been a serious passage. There's been an awful lot of things in this passage that have been brought to our attention. The reality of death for each one of us has been brought to our attention. The fact is, every single one of us here, they say there's two sure things in life, and death and taxes. Is that right? Death and taxes, yeah. I don't mean the thing you drive home in. I mean taxes from the government. But in this particular case, the certainty is the certainty of death. It's something that's certain for every one of us. We all face it. Some people have seen death. Some people have never seen death. But the important thing is that it will happen to you and every one of us. And, one of the things that husbands and wives have to talk about, not easy to talk about this, but they have to talk about their own death. And they need to talk about the arrangements that they're going to make for their own death. Will there be a plot? Will there be a coffin? What will happen? Who will do what? And if there's going to be a memorial service, the question will be, what will be said at the memorial service? What do they want that service to be? Okay. And so often in the course of my ministry, I've had the privilege to sit with people. Dear old Chris Cole's mother, who is not very well now. She's very near to the end herself. But when I first came to this church, he came to me and he said, Stephen, he said, my father's died. Will you help us with the funeral? And so I had to go and talk to them all. It was the second one that I did, which was very difficult for me. They were all strangers, but I had to go and speak to them and talk to them about death. Imagine doing that. That's not easy to do. But we had a great service and all the family were there. He was a believer. He was a great friend of the previous Archbishop of Canterbury, who was a saved man. He believed in the Lord Jesus as his Savior and was a Christian, of course. But the most important, that was a very close family thing that I learned there. And so this is what's coming out in this passage. But there's lots of things in this passage that speak to us. The big thing is the fact that these two had ended their days together. They hadn't Sarah hadn't died when Abraham was there. Abraham was somewhere else when she died, but he came home quickly. and he came home to mourn, and he came home to weep. And that's so very poignant to me, because a lot of people say to me, oh, you'd have to excuse me, I cry a bit now and again. I said, of course you do. If you didn't cry, then there would be something wrong, wouldn't there? No, it's important to cry. It's important to mourn. And Abraham knew that there would come a day in the future, not in his lifetime, but there would come a day in the future when Abraham and his wife would both be raised from the dead and he'd see her again. He knew all that. Yeah, but that didn't mean that he didn't come home to weep. He did come home to weep because he would lose her in this life, but he would gain her in the next life. That's the point. He wouldn't be married to her, by the way, when he meets her again, because marriage is always for this life. Okay, we have this idea, oh, I will love you forever and ever. Well, you might love her forever and ever, but you won't be married forever and ever, because death actually causes a marriage to cease. That's what happens. And that's the story of Abraham and Sarah. A beautiful story, really. Sad in many ways, because Abraham, the old prophet of God, was left alone. He started off alone before he married Sarah, and he ended up alone in the end. And that's the story of life, isn't it? It's the story of every one of us. And who knows whether I will pass away first or last? I don't know. But one of us is going to be left behind. One of us is going to have to conduct the funeral, you know. So this is also about the relationship that we have with God. Make sure that when the time comes for you to be laid to rest, in whichever way you choose, make sure that when that time comes, your sins are forgiven and that you're right with God. And if you need to talk about this with anybody, you're very welcome to ask me to stay behind today and we can talk to you. Or in fact, any time in the future, we can talk to you. Except I will say this one thing. Don't put it off. Because you do not know when that day will be. I don't know when the day will be. You don't know when the day will be. So what I'm saying is be in time. Be ready before the time runs out. Well, amen. Thank you very much.